Welcome, Kyle, to 1 Million Minds. I'm so glad you're here. I'm very excited about talking to you as an entrepreneur who's gone through a similar pattern of quitting their corporate job, which you had a great opportunity to go up in the corporate ladder, but you decided to focus on your heart and follow your heart and your passion. So you started a company, Intelligent Imaging, and your product Heartbeats. I want to talk a little bit more about it. But I think a couple of things that jumped out at me was what we talked about is how did you decide when was a good time for you to quit and why did you do it? And give us some context about your background so we can get started.
So I'm a longtime imaging person. I work in medical imaging, so hospital IT, but we deal with X-ray, CT, MRI, and doing all that digitally. And so I've had a fantastic career, and I really enjoyed my job in corporate. Had worked up to management in corporate and had a promising career ahead of me. I saw there were problems though. I was not able to provide the kind of service that I wanted to provide to my customers, which are doctors. And if I don't take care of the doctors, they don't take care of patients. And so I went looking for a set of tools to help me better manage the systems that I was in charge of, and I couldn't find them on the market. And so the basic problem was I would be sitting at my desk having a good day, and then the phone would ring and a doctor would tell me that the systems were down. And then I would spend an hour to hour and a half trying to find the problem and fix it. And I said, that's not good enough. It's the 21st century. I should know my systems are down, not the doctors. So I saw a problem. I couldn't find a solution out on the market. And I said, you know, if I have this problem, other people do too. To your question, there's never a good time to leave a really good job that you enjoy. But I have an amazing spouse, and I saw this as an opportunity to really grow myself. I had a good trajectory, but I maybe wasn't applying myself. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't passionate. And I found something. I said, I can make a difference to lots of people. I can change the industry, change the world. And that's when I said, this is what I want to do is really impact a lot of people in a positive way. And so I found my passion, I found a problem, and I went off to build a better mousetrap.
That is amazing. So because a couple of things you said, I want the entrepreneurs to pay attention to, right? Because as entrepreneurs, when we see a problem, we can't let it go, right? We say, there's a problem that needs to be fixed. But something you said is, if I'm having this problem, others might be having this problem too. So I want to come back to that because that's where market validation comes in. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But before that, sure. You said two things that's very essential. If you're married, if your spouse is not on board, you are in trouble. Because I'm married too, right? So that's important to, in a broader structure, entrepreneurship is a very lonely game. If you don't have a support structure, in this case, a spouse, friends, or a mentor to be able to bounce these ideas out of, it's going to be tougher sledding along the way. But I think what you mentioned is very important, right? When you're in a corporate environment, yes, you are contributing, but it's very hard to see your contribution go to the company's bottom line. And that's why I quit too. I said, you know what? I want to make a difference in people's life where I feel like I'm having more of an impact and I'm using more of my brain and my skills that I've gotten rather than a single silo. So talk to me a little bit more about when you saw the problem, you said, yes, I'm having a problem. Most probably other people are having this problem too. How did you validate that?
It didn't take a lot. I've done consulting work within healthcare, so I've been involved in many different healthcare companies over the years, many different hospitals, and I had started building a network on LinkedIn, trying to just get connected with other people in the industry, and so I have a pretty good range of contacts of people I've worked with, worked for, and just started floating the idea against my friends and mentors, and everyone said two things. Everyone said, yes, there's a problem, and Kyle, you're way underselling yourself in terms of what I thought the value or what I might charge. In fact, I will tell you, I was embarrassed to charge for my product. And that's a big problem that I've found a lot of entrepreneurs have is they don't value themselves enough. They're either way under or way over. And so talking to people, engaging an appropriate value, and being not ashamed to ask for that value. And that's a big mental shift that was hard for me actually in terms of, but to answer your question, it was really reaching out to my my network and my contacts and asking and talking to people and floating the idea before I spent the energy to really dive in and find a solution.
Perfect. So that's great. I think that's a very valuable lesson you're saying there, right? You didn't just find a problem and you say, okay, because trust me, I've done this. I understood, I thought it was a problem, went to build the product. 3, 4 months later, I never asked the person, so, oh, problem. When you go into the market, you completely get shut down, right? And a lot of early entrepreneurs do that. And I think since you're a consultant, you have a little bit of a better background than most people, because as an entrepreneur, you see opportunity everywhere. But if you don't validate it, because one thing that we all have to understand is we are not a customer. We're not paying for this. And the second thing is also when you're asking people, will you do it? Will you do it? Most friends and family will also be like, yes, because they don't want to hurt you. But if you have good friends, they'll tell you no. But when you get the first person to pay $1 for your service, your product, that's when you're really validating the market, right? And I think I want a younger entrepreneurs to get that, because you see a vision or a solution, you go running 1,000 miles an hour without validating it. So that's great that you did that. So talk to me a little bit more about, we haven't talked about Heartbeat or your company. Give me a little bit more context on exactly what problem you're solving.
So again, the problem was I'm an IT support person. So I managed a lot of IT systems for a very large health system. And again, I had no idea whether my systems were running or not until a person called to tell me that they weren't. So I waited for the phone to ring, and then I took action instead of being proactive. And so I said, one, that's not okay. And secondarily, the systems that I worked with are so complex, and there are so many different vendors and different solutions across networks. When we did have an issue, it typically took 60 to 90 minutes to isolate where the problem was, not even fix it, to just know that it is on this particular server or in this system. So we set out to find, and it's been called an early warning system, because I want to know a problem before my doctors do. So it's an early warning system or a spotlight to identify problems before it impacts users and patients, and then localize the problem down to a server or an integration point. Basically automating all of the troubleshooting steps that we would normally do. I automated all of those steps to within 60 seconds, I know server 3 at Mercy Hospital has a problem. Now I can focus the attention of the subject matter experts and the team to resolve the problem very quickly. Again, cutting off huge amounts of time in troubleshooting, but increasing patient care, but also significant impacts to the bottom line of up to the tune of the amount of downtime hospitals actually achieve or have is staggering. Something where along the lines of 29 hours per year during business hours of downtime. And you can imagine the effect financially is unbelievable. And these are all longitudinal studies. I too am an academic, and I have all the documentation, but so there's a huge ROI, there's a patient care impact to it, and then it all stemmed from I was trying to solve a problem that I had with my team, my department, my system. And then as we start looking for the secondary and tertiary impacts of that problem are much larger than I had originally thought.
That's perfect. Okay, I mean, that's great. From going from 60 to 90 minutes to isolate a problem to 60 seconds early warning, that is a significant improvement in the process, right? But let's step back, because the CTO, I'm pretty sure, was all over this because they know this. But the CFO signs off on this, I would think. Does the CFO know this is a problem? Did they appreciate that 29 hours a year is a big ROI, or did you have to do a lot of selling to make that happen?
So I don't want to use the word selling. I would say educating, because I think this was something that, at least in my industry, that is accepted. This is just how it has always been. And no one really ever considered there's a better way. And so, you could also say it's a blue ocean product. There's nothing on the market that does it, which means as I go into shops, I'm educating people. How does it work? Why does it work? How can it improve them? So it's both a blessing and a curse if I'm not competing against anyone, but no one else has really a frame of reference. And so, or people will look at me and say, well, I have a network monitoring tool. Isn't that the same thing? and then I have to explain the differences at the application layer versus infrastructure or IT. So it's, again, it's education, and nobody minds learning and educating. People don't like to be sold.
No, I completely agree. So the reason I'm saying that is, if it's business as usual, right? Like they're used to 29 hours. To you, that was a great opportunity for them. Like, this is business as usual. So that's what I was going. So when you actually show them the data to show how much better they can be, I think a lot more people were willing to, you know, put their foot in the water. So did you have to do trials before they saw this actual validation, or did they know you well enough? I'm just curious, just from a thought process, on how did they see what this, because I've presented plenty of data to in the healthcare context, right?
Right.
It's a little harder changing minds in healthcare context compared to like a tech industry. So I've presented data, dashboards and all that. Even then, it felt like it took me 6 months to drag them along. That finally I had to show a proof of concept before all work, but I'm hoping yours was a little easier than that.
So the reality is most people don't know they have the problem.
Got it. Okay.
And when downtime is such a loaded word, people will say, well, I don't have any downtime. I've never had any downtime. I haven't had downtime in 10 years. I'm like, okay, sure. Because what is downtime to a user? The doctor sitting in front of a workstation, all they care about is, can they do their task or not? But when you talk about downtime from an IT perspective, that means absolutely no data can be flowing. And so it's very hard to quantify. And typically the only person that can quantify downtime is the vendor, who has a vested interest in not giving you that data. So even defining what is downtime and those perceptions. So I like to talk about it as unproductive time, is I think a better way. And again, most people kind of have their head in their sand. Oh, well, we don't have that problem. Well, you know, so it's, again, it's an education and a perception. To your point, I wish that I had given my product away earlier. So I've been at this for about 2 years, and I had this belief, if I build it, they will come, and people will just come, everyone will line up to buy my product. It is way harder than that. I completely underestimated and naively of what sales was, how the process works. And I've had a lengthy education on how to do sales. I wish that I had 2 years ago given the product away on free trials and demos and proven it early on. I kept believing, you know, you kind of drink your own Kool-Aid. My product is so great, I don't need to do that. And so that would have probably saved me a lot of time, but my mistakes have also given me the ability to practice my message and really hone and learn all of the no's that people told me gave me information to refine, and I've refined the product a lot over the past 2 years based on addressing the concerns that all of those no's gave me. So, you know, every no is an opportunity to go, well, that's something I didn't think about, or how can I refine the message or the product? Because I don't actually do everything people ask for either.
Absolutely. You hit on a couple of macro things that I want to talk about, just because as entrepreneurs, it doesn't matter what industry we are in, we do the same thing, right? So for example, earlier starting on, like I said, I've made plenty of mistakes. One I want to highlight is, in your head, you have this amazing product or service, and you will all build it and they'll come. My dad was a serial entrepreneur too, and this is what he did. He used the best raw materials, the best thing, and he made like something like Lay's potato chip. Right now it's available. Again, this is back in India.
Right.
This is about 30 years back. He used top of the line and he packaged it. It was amazing product, but nobody knew what it was. And his was expensive. But he focused so much on the product creation. He said, people want healthy potato chips. I got this, no salt. I don't think he sold a lot of packets at all. So with that, as creators, we sometimes take the not the interaction as well as being able to understand what does the market need. So what you said was very clear to people. Like, sometimes you take the bill, they'll come, but I can guarantee you almost it never happens. So what the other thing you mentioned is also the process of iteration, right? You do something, you ask person in the market. So you start with the minimum viable product, you present the market, they give you feedback, there are things that you didn't even think about. And again, when you go through the process, I'm pretty sure your product is still improving on a daily basis, right? And as an entrepreneur, you have to be humble enough to know that your product's not perfect by any stretch of imagination day one. Be humble to the feedback and receiving it and opening and making your baby better, right? So I
Right.
think those are two essential things that you have highlighted. But again, I've spoken to so many entrepreneurs and some common themes that it's good. So now we've talked about one of your challenges, which was thinking about the go-to-market strategy and understanding how we could, and you mentioned a couple of things, whether it's free trials or getting some MVP concepts in front of our customers earlier. What else do you think were some of your challenges that you're able to overcome just to help our audience understand so that they can resonate with it?
So I think I went big, to use the baseball analogy. I went for the home run every time, like really big systems, the big deal, the big score. It would have benefited me to start smaller and, find smaller organizations with personal connections. And, they say fail fast. And I'm a big believer in that. Get it in, make mistakes. That way you haven't invested a huge amount of time, energy, or resources. With the big health systems that I've been going after, well, they have a minimum 1, if not 2-year purchase cycle. So I thought by going under operational and doing a monthly service fee, I would be able to just skate under the radar and get it quick sales. Well, no, like my sales are, 6 months, a year and a half cycles. Well, that's really hard to do as an entrepreneur. And so finding smaller wins, and again, the free trials where I could demonstrate the value. And even if they ended up not buying, if I could get that feedback quickly and a lot of feedback early on to continue improving the product. I mean, I went for, months without really demoing the product or waiting. I kept waiting. So-and-so said they were going to call me back. They're going to call me back. Well, people don't always call you back. And,
Absolutely. So those are very critical things there. So bite-sized development and being validation in the market. And then healthcare is notorious for long sales cycle. For example, the revenue cycle vendor we're part of, they did a dashboard. 18 months later is when they actually were able to onboard staff to help with something, right? Painful process, but they were a $25 million company. They're not giant,
right.
but they were used to it. But when you look at it, let's say you have some challenges right now, but let's just take about the sales cycle, right? What are some of the creative things you're doing? Because right now, as a market, everybody is 30 million people, our job companies are like, oh my God, you don't know what the sky is falling. There's so many, and healthcare as a whole is very risk averse. So
Mhm.
what are some of the things you're doing, based on the situation right now to kind of overcome some of these? I know there's a couple of questions that one is long sales cycle is is the worst part of this, right? But are there things you can do that are shorter delivery periods or things you're doing? That's one. And the second part of the question is, are you doing anything new because of our pandemic
Sure.
we're here and things you're doing along the sales process?
So I think I've really embraced the demo and the trial. And
Okay.
so, what I want to do is I want to get my product installed, get it running in the customer environment, demonstrate and prove the value. So instead of showing them my data or industry data, I can show them their data. And so I really want, once I can get that working in their environment, I expect that the transition from once I have them using it and comfortable with it, to take it away would be a pain point. So there's a very good value both for me in terms of the feedback, but also in terms of the sales cycle of, I will have a better conversion rate if they've already used the product in their environment and they've become accustomed to it. So that's, again, there's two really good points there for me in terms of improving my sales transitions as well as getting the feedback. So that's one thing. We've talked about deferred payments. We've talked about a lot of different models, even potentially going at risk. So, looking at ways to, my goal now is get the product in and get it running. And so if I have to, waive fees, if I have to discount extremely heavily or I will go at risk in the early phases because I am confident in the value that it will deliver. And so those are things that I could have done early on. Now, in response to the current situation, obviously healthcare is contracting pretty substantially. Capital expenditures are just, they're not happening. And there's a lot of people that I know that have been furloughed and resource pools are shrinking. So in every problem for an entrepreneur, that means there's an opportunity. And so as soon as I saw this, I said, well, if I were back in my old job and I just lost 10, 20% of my workforce with the same amount of work, the same systems to support, the same patients to see, how do they say do more with less, do more with less. Well, you can't do that forever. That's not a sustainable model. So part of our communications is now to say, well, we can help you be more efficient. You can't do more with less. You are already short-staffed, so you have to be more efficient and you have to work smarter. And that's where we come in. So we can back to my take 30 or 60 to 90 minutes off of every ticket. We're able to free up resources, make them highly efficient, that allows them to go do other things. So, the way we market this is not that it's a reduction in FTEs, it's to allow your FTEs to go work on other revenue producing projects. So that's how I talk to a CFO is, you want to make more revenue, I need to help free up your resources so they can.
How is that new to me working for you?
It's going over well. We've seen a pretty big increase over probably the last 3 weeks. Things have really started to pick up. Organizations are seeing the predicted surge. I mean, the demand is coming back, but the resources aren't there. And so they all know they've got to do something. And the fact that we're willing to go at risk, to partner with them, to find creative ways, and really it's about helping them succeed. It's not about me winning, it's about me understanding the customer problems, helping them solve their problems, and then eventually as a good partner, that will benefit all sides in the long term. So it's not about closing the sale, it's about helping my customer.
A couple of things you said, I think that's important to entrepreneurs, right? You're absolutely right. A lot of entrepreneurs starting out think about sales as closing the sale. That's all, right? High ticket closing. Let me go learn this 5 ways of objection handling and close a sale. But what you said really now is what's critical, right? At the end of the day, whether it's this environment or other environment, you adding value to your clients will absolutely help your business grow. And that's what you're doing. And what you're doing, because of the environment, you're getting a little bit more creative. You're being more resourceful and you're taking some of the risk. And sometimes you have to do that because when you, like, let's say you do this, nobody else is doing this, right? In the next 6 months, we'll come back to normal at some point. And things are back to normal. Who are they going to do business with? Somebody who's helped them to come out of it. And then your point, well, thing. Right now, you saw an opportunity, but there is an opportunity. There's a big pressure on cost reduction, which means automation, efficiency improvements is across the board the same requirement for almost every industry. So you are kind of planting the seeds for when that does come back and people are looking at it and everything starting to get to some amount of normalcy, then they see a lot of value in what you're doing. So what I implore to the entrepreneurs listening to the show is think about it. Yes, you at the end of the day, you are in business, make some money at least. You're not doing it just for the kindness of your heart, but you also have to make sure that you're adding value to your clients, and that will in turn make your business grow faster and become a lot more of a brand during this time. So I do want to have a couple more minutes with you. So I want to talk a little bit more about what are some of the, just give me like the top 2 problems you have currently, and or we could do another exercise. If I could wave a magic wand and make one problem disappear for you, what would be your biggest problem you're facing right now?
Lead generation. Okay. I mean, I need more at-bats, more opportunities to present to customers. You're not going to win every one. So the more opportunities you have, the greater your chances of success, and also the better you are at the message.
Absolutely. And I think you hit on it, right? Like at the end of the day, just like you did LinkedIn, I'm going through a process of network building in LinkedIn. It's whether we like it or not, it's almost a numbers game at the end of the day, right? So if you have enough people, and I think as entrepreneurs, we're eternally optimistic, right? We see one lead, we just assume that one lead is now going to give me $1 million contract. And actually, that's not happening. So what you need to understand is you need to, I don't know, the humility or just stepping away from your baby and understanding that at the end of the day, even if you talk to 100 people who you know or you think want your solution or could use your solution, doesn't mean they're all in a situation or are going to use it. So you have to keep priming your pump to get the leads going, and then they'll go through your process. Have this, for example, with the Kyle's case, they will go only about 10% might actually go to a demo or trial, of which only 10%. So if you start with 100, you're looking at one potential client. I'm being fictitious. It might be more, but you have to understand the numbers, right? There's a lot of data behind it. You look like a data guy. I do that too, right? If I send 100 leads out to LinkedIn, I'm going to get about 30% to accept my connection, and about 10% out of that I have an actual conversation, and then maybe from there it becomes something else. So basically, you have to understand that. So that's great. So right now, as a lead generation, I'm assuming you have a network of doctors that you're talking to, or not doctors, a healthcare system that you're talking to, or how are you doing it currently? Just curious.
So, I'm 100% self-funded, which is a whole nother issue and problem, and it has its both good and bad sides to it. But another opportunity I found in the current market is there's a lot of people that are looking. So I've reached out and found a number of salespeople they're looking for full-time employment, and I'm not in a position to provide that. But I am working with them and providing them extremely high percentages in a commission, like 5 to 10 times what you would expect, because my costs are super low. I have a full-time job while I'm working to build my business. And so, I've cut my cost almost to zero, as little as humanly possible. That way I can afford to pay, help them help me, and everybody wins. So that was another opportunity, is bring in salespeople that are looking, have them work their networks, the connections that they already know. And instead of just blind cold calling, pushing out on LinkedIn, working with people that already have relationships at the right levels within the organizations that I want to target.
That's amazing. So at the end of the day, you bring up a very good point, right? There are 30 million Americans out of job, and a lot of these folks are high-performing individuals for whatever reasons don't have jobs. So I know a lot of other entrepreneurs who couldn't afford a full-time developer, right? So they said, hey, can you work on a project basis? You are going to find if you look hard enough, you're going to find, like what Kyle said, amazing sales folks, people, developers, just whatever skill you can think of, who are looking for opportunity right now. And if you get creative, you can get some top-notch talent to help your business, but also they have an upside, and both of you have an upside at the same time. So that's that. At the end of the day, like, you are finding opportunities in this situation, and I think the folks who sign up also have an upside. So it's a win-win for both parties involved.
And I would just like to say that no matter what you do, it always has to be win-win. You should always be looking to add value to others, and it's never I win, you lose, because that is not sustainable anywhere, anytime. It has to be love, passion, but also where you're, something sustainable, and that should always be that both sides benefit equally, or even if you can, I would say, add more value to the other person in every transaction, and your business will grow.
Absolutely. Okay. So we're at the end of our time. So Kyle, how can people follow your journey, see how intelligent imaging and your things going is? I know I can post your LinkedIn profile below this, but is there other way? What is the best way for somebody who, let's say they are in the healthcare field, they want to partner with you? What is the best way for them to reach you?
So LinkedIn is probably the best way. I'm active every morning. I do a lot of content marketing there and just share my thoughts, stories, observations on the industry. You can go to our website, imagingheartbeat.com, or email me, but I'm on LinkedIn every day. Message me. I'd love to hear about other people's journeys, answer any questions that I can, or provide any way that I can help others on their journey.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Kyle, for your time. And those who want to follow Kyle in his journey as he moves his business to the next stage, please follow the link below. And appreciate your time, Kyle.
Thank you so much, Raj. Thanks for having me.
First.